Okay, so let's dive into this really modern paradox, right? We're constantly connected, we're juggling a million things at once, but so many of us feel, I don't know, strangely unfulfilled and just mentally drained. So, in this explainer, we're going to get to the heart of why our super busy lives often feel so unproductive and, what we can actually do about it. So, does this sound familiar to you? You start the day off, you're feeling strong, but then, bam, mid afternoon hits and you just feel like you've run into a wall of mental exhaustion. It's such a common feeling, isn't it? Both at work and in our personal lives, where it feels like the demands on our attention they never, ever stop. And that right there, that's the core conflict we're going to dig into. I mean, think about it. We're juggling emails during meetings, we're listening to podcasts while trying to answer texts, and we keep telling ourselves, wow, I'm being so productive. But the reality? Well, our brains are basically sending out an SOS. They're trying to signal to us that this constant juggling act is taking a really serious toll. So this brings us to what's called the overload paradox. And it's this really strange state of being in constant motion, always busy, but feeling like you're not actually moving forward at all. This cycle has really become a defining condition of modern life. There's just this immense pressure to do more, to be more, to achieve more. But the more we pile on our plates, the less effective we actually become. Our stress levels just climb and climb, and we find ourselves running faster and faster just to stay in the exact same place. It's like a hamster wheel. Okay, so what is actually happening inside our heads when we're in this state of busy? Let's take a look at the science behind distraction and what's called cognitive overload. All right, this next part gets to a huge myth about productivity. We love to think we're amazing multitaskers, right? But if you look at the neuroscience, that's just not what's happening. Our brains literally can't do multiple high-focus tasks at once. Instead, what we're doing is rapidly switching our attention from one thing to the next. And every single one of those switches, it comes with a cognitive price tag. And trust me, that price really adds up. Constant task switching leads to cognitive overload. And the symptoms? Well, you've probably felt them. You know that classic brain fog where you can't think straight? Or having a shorter fuse and feeling way more irritable? Maybe you're forgetting things. And then just feeling completely mentally spent by the end of the day. It's literally our brain just running out of bandwidth. Now, here's the thing. This isn't all just some happy accident. As this quote from Cal Newport's work points out, so much of our modern tech is intentionally designed to capture and hold our attention. The goal? It's simple. Keep us engaged for as long as humanly possible. Why? Because that's the business model. And this is the mechanism in action. I mean, think about it. Every time we post something, we're basically pulling the lever on a slot machine. Are we going to get likes, retweets, or crickets? That like button was literally designed to create what one of its own engineers at Facebook called bright dings of pseudo-pleasure. It taps directly into our brain's reward system to create these incredibly powerful addictive loops. So this whole addictive cycle, it actually builds another layer onto our problem. It's not just about being distracted. It's also about this sort of futile pursuit of happiness through external things. This is what's known as the happiness treadmill. Yeah, so the technical term for this is a key psychological concept called hedonic adaptation. And what it means is that we have this natural tendency to pretty quickly return to a baseline level of happiness, no matter what happens in our lives, good or bad. That initial thrill of something new, whether it's a new car, a new phone, a job promotion, it just inevitably fades. There was this landmark study back in the 70s that demonstrated this perfectly. Researchers actually tracked two groups, recent lottery winners and recent accident victims, and what they found was incredible. After just a few months, both groups had returned pretty much to their original baseline happiness levels. That massive, life-changing joy of winning the lottery, it just didn't last. And this is what traps us on what they call the hedonic treadmill. We chase the next purchase, the next achievement, the next little dopamine hit, always hoping that this time, this will be the thing that brings lasting contentment. But the novelty always wears off, and we just find ourselves stuck in this totally unsustainable cycle of always seeking more. Okay, so if the modern world is just constantly pushing us towards speed, distraction, and this nonstop seeking, what's the antidote? Well, a really powerful counter-philosophy has started to emerge, and it's simply the idea of slowing down.
Now, slow living isn't about being lazy or unproductive. Not at all. It's a mindset. It's about consciously, deliberately curating a meaningful life that actually aligns with your deepest values. So instead of just trying to do things faster, the focus shifts to doing things better.
And this really shows the core shift in that mindset. You see, a fast lifestyle basically assumes that being busy means you're important. But a slow lifestyle, it rejects that idea completely. It proposes that living a meaningful life is what's truly important. And to do that, well, that requires being present, being conscious, and being intentional.
I love this quote from author Brooke McAlary because it captures the essence of this perfectly. It's not about doing less just for the sake of it. No. It's about doing less of what doesn't matter so that you can create the time, the space, and the energy for what truly does. It's about, you could say, strategic deceleration. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually turn this philosophy into practice, right? It's one thing to want a more focused life, but how do we get there? Well, let's open up the intentionality toolkit. All right, here are 3 really powerful strategies you can start with. First up, batch your tasks. So instead of letting emails just interrupt you all day long, try handling them in 1 or 2 dedicated blocks of time. This lets your brain stay in one mode for much longer. Second, aggressively silence the noise. And I mean aggressively. This means muting all those non-essential notifications, closing all those extra tabs. You have to create a sanctuary for your focus. And finally, number 3, practice gratitude. This is the most direct antidote to that hedonic treadmill we talked about. By consciously focusing on what you already have, you start to find contentment right where you are. Now, these personal changes are incredibly powerful, but you could argue they're just treating the symptoms. So what if the underlying disease is actually bigger? What if that feeling of pointlessness we sometimes have isn't just about how we work, but about what we're working on? Let's broaden our perspective a bit. This introduces a really critical distinction between 2 ideas, exchange value and use value. So exchange value is pretty simple. It's what a job pays. Use value, on the other hand, is what that job actually contributes to society. Just think of a nurse versus, say, a corporate lobbyist. The nurse has immense use value, but often a much lower exchange value. The problem is our economy is almost entirely driven by exchange value, and that can create this really profound disconnect between the work we do and our sense of purpose.
And that brings us to our final and maybe most essential question. In a world that is practically designed to overload our senses and trap us on these treadmills of consumption and distraction, how do we decide what is truly the best use of our time right now? It's a huge question, and it's one that connects our personal daily struggle for focus with the larger, deeply human quest for a meaningful life.